Today on Head Coach.
I was going to start as a freshman, be All-American my second year, win the Heisman the third year, and go to the pros. I mean, that was...
What a plan!
I had it all worked out. And I said, well, what about this guy named Jim Kelly from East Brady, Pennsylvania? It says quarterback with no slash next to it. You know, what about him? I thought I was your man. And he looked me right in the eye. He said, Mark, somebody's got to back you up.
There was times when we couldn't stop the run as good as we needed to stop it, and we couldn't run it as good as we needed to at times. We're going to make sure we get a little bit more inside drill this year.
Apparently he walked towards him saying, you're not going to shoot me, bro. And he just kept walking to him, and the kid panicked, pulled the trigger, and shot him right in the belly at point blank range. Looked a little fishy, and then they took some cells out and studied them, and then we found out she had cervical cancer. About a month in, I was literally laying on the carpet at the Holiday Inn, crying out to God, saying, God, what'd you do to me? Why'd you put me here? I can't do it, you know?
Just overwhelming?
It was just so overwhelmed. I was like, I can't do this job.
Coach's Fact is proudly brought to you by OnTrack Incorporated, the leader in fiber-to-the-home connectivity. During Mark Richt's tenure at Florida State as quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator, he sent 6 quarterbacks into the NFL, coached 2 Heisman Trophy winners, and 1 runner-up. In his 7 years as coordinator at FSU, the Seminoles offense finished the regular season ranked in the nation's top 5 in scoring offense on 5 occasions.
To me, how was that going to Miami? Did you know you were coming in behind the caliber of other athletes that were there?
Right. Well, when I went to Miami, Miami was struggling. Miami was getting close to deciding not to even play football anymore. I think Miami probably had a couple losing records and maybe a 6-5 record 3 years prior to me going there. So it wasn't a real popular decision at the time, you know, to go to Miami. It was for me. I was excited, you know. And the quarterback reputation was not really that strong at the time at all. As a matter of fact, that's why I went there. I thought I had a chance to start as a freshman. I was going to start as a freshman, be All-American my second year, win the Heisman the third year, and go to the pros. I mean, that was...
What a plan!
I had it all worked out.
Hollywood was knocking at the door, I'm sure.
And Coach Saban, not Nick Saban, but Lou Saban, was the head coach. And, of course, he told me how good I was, and I believed him. And then I remember right before my signing, before I signed, I was looking in the paper at the verbal commitments. And I was like, Coach Saban, I said, can you tell me a little bit about this guy named Mike Roderick? You know, what's the deal on him? I knew he had, his team had won the state championship in Florida, where I played. Yeah. And he says, oh, don't worry about it. You see that slash DB, he's a defensive back, don't worry about him. You know, well, as it turned out, he actually played QB as a freshman. But anyway, then I said, well, what about this guy named Jim Kelly from East Brady, Pennsylvania? It says quarterback with no slash next to it. I'm like,
no slash is not good.
Yeah, I was like, you know, what about him? I thought I was your man. And he looked me right in the eye. He said, Mark, somebody's got to back you up. And I said, good thinking, Coach. And so anyway, it didn't quite work out the way I'd hoped.
Yeah, but what did that do for you? I mean, you know, I think sometimes you look back at your life and you go, wow, I'd be such a different person. I mean, did you do any of that?
Oh, well, I mean, it crushed my spirit, you know. My whole life was all rolled into this one thing, which was football. And that was my world. And then when my world began to crumble right in front of my eyes, and I was watching a guy kind of living my dream, it hurt so bad that I began to do all kind of bad things, you know. Try to become an All-American in the nighttime games, you know, and didn't behave at all like I should, and just trying to fit in, you know, trying to feel good, trying to mask the pain somehow of what was going on. So I really turned into a bum, pretty much, you know. No, but really, I realized that.
Come on,
no,
Mark
well,
Richt, the bum?
you know, I began to learn that I was a very shallow person. I was very limited in my thinking, and I realized that I wasn't a very good son a lot of times. I wasn't a very good brother a lot of times. I wasn't a very good friend a lot of times. I was so self-centered. It was unbelievable. All I cared about was me, my career, my this, my that, you know. And then when this all started to break down, I realized that there's a lot more important things in life than this thing, and I had a long way to go to grow as a person.
Well, you also, you had a pretty good game. One of those games.
Game?
I remember one game. No, I'm sure there was.
It probably was one game.
Well, you had to come in and you kind of pitched them to a win, didn't you?
Well, we were playing Florida. Jim Kelly, Jim got his calf whacked real hard, couldn't play anymore. I came in. We were actually losing the game at the time. I threw a square into Rocky Belk. He went 55 yards for a touchdown. I can remember everything because this is my only highlight of my career. And then later in the game, I hit a tight end, Glenn Dennison, for about a 20-yard gain, set up a field goal. Our kicker comes in, he goes to Coach's number, I can make it, 55-yarder. He kicks the field goal, hits the upright, goes in. We beat Florida because it was kind of back and forth. We were behind, took the lead.
Yeah.
It was still a real close game. I think they scored again. We had to kick a field goal to win it, and so it was an awesome game. And so those two completions were huge in that game. That's the good news. The bad news was I was 2 for 13.
I wasn't going to bring it up.
Did you see the stat?
Yeah, but I wasn't going to go there.
I got to admit, I was 2 for 13, and I don't even know how many interceptions I threw in there.
How did you transition? How did you decide that coaching was for you, and really what made you go in there, and how did that all happen?
Well, I thought I had a shot at being a pro. And I went as a free agent to Denver, got to Denver, and signed my contract. I was so excited to sign my contract. And the very day that I signed my contract, I went back to the hotel, turned on the TV, and there's a news flash. John Elway has just been traded from the Colts to the Broncos. You know, so I called my agent. I'm like, can I get out of here, you know?
Yeah.
He's like, did you sign the contract? I said, yeah. He said, well, it's too bad. You know, you got to live it out. So I was there. I was in camp about a week, and I was that tackling dummy in the pass pro drill, you know, and they wanted to get their money's worth out of me. And so then I got cut, and I'll never forget Coach Reeves cut me, and I was the first guy to get cut that year. And I'm in there crying like a baby, you know, and he started crying with me. He felt so bad for me. But anyway, I got my bags. I'm going down the elevator out of the place we were staying, the dorm we were staying in Colorado. And as I'm coming out the door, the veterans were just coming in because the rookies go in before the veterans show up. So here I am crying. I got my bags in my hand.
They knew. They knew.
Oh, they knew. You know, some receivers like, dang man, you got cut already. It had to be a receiver, right? Because those guys, they're the ones that always got something smart to say.
Don't you hate that?
Thought I'd try life insurance, and ended up not being able to even take my test. I took my 40-hour course to get ready to take my test, but one day when I went to the job site where they were kind of sponsoring me at that place of business, I drove in the parking lot, and my boss was being handcuffed and put into a police car because he wasn't doing business the way he ought to do it, and that kind of ended my life insurance career. And then I tried to sell memberships at a health club for a while, and I got fired from that. But I held out hope. I had a buddy. My agent fired me too, by the way. He was losing money on me, but I had a friend who wanted to be an agent, so I said, hey man, maybe we can try this thing again.
Coach, it couldn't have been that bad.
It was bad. I'm telling you the truth.
Was it really?
So anyway, I get a shot with the Miami Dolphins. So I get in there, I'm in the locker room, I got a chance to make this club, and the first son of a gun walks in the door was Dan Marino.
Well, this was '83, right? Was it the huge?
That was the great.
That's right, the quarterback class kind of a thing.
Yeah,
so you can't feel too bad. I mean,
well, I know. I mean, I backed up a Hall of Famer, NFL Hall of Famer at Miami, Jim Kelly. Of course, I really wasn't on the team with Denver, but I got to see John Elway.
Well, for a lot of people, that's pretty good.
I got to practice with Dan Marino for about a month, so good. I think the Lord kind of knew that I was going to be a quarterback's coach one day, and I needed to know what a good one looked like. I couldn't look in the mirror. So. But anyway, that's kind of what happened. And the final thing, after getting cut from Miami, I looked in the newspaper and found an ad for bartending school. I'll never forget working. The last time I was working there, it was like New Year's Eve. I'm low man on the totem pole. I got to work that night, and then that's when all the college games are being played. So I'm trying to watch all the games and do my job, and they're asking me drinks. I don't know how to make them, and I'm looking in the book underneath, and it's awful, And finally, the manager comes and bails me out, and after about a little while, he says, "Just sit over there. Just sit over there and watch the game. You're done." He said, "Don't leave though. I got another job for you." And so he fired me from bartending, but he hired me. He hired me to clean the bar from like 2 in the morning until 10. And then finally,
they see talent.
Yeah, they knew I had some skills.
They recognized it right off the bat.
But at that point, that's when I said, maybe I'll try coaching.
Coming up next on Head Coach.
Well, what if you die? What are we going to do? I mean, and all those kinds of things. And she handled it better than me. I mean, I really struggled. I went numb for about a month.
Coach's Fact is proudly brought to you by OnTrack Incorporated, the leader in fiber-to-the-home connectivity. In 2002, Mark Richt led the Dogs to a 13-1 record, their first SEC championship in 20 years, defeated Florida State in the Sugar Bowl, and finished the season with a number 3 national ranking. Georgia led the SEC in both scoring offense and scoring defense. Richt was a consensus choice as SEC Coach of the Year and was a finalist for the National Coach of the Year.
Coach Bowden has got a special place in your heart. He's been a huge influence in your life.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Well, Coach Bowden, of course, gave me my first opportunity to coach, but he also is he was a very strong spiritual influence in my life too. Well, 1986, it's my second year as a graduate assistant coach at Florida State. It's about game 2, 3, somewhere in there. We have an open date. Well, I think it was on a Saturday night. I'm not 100% sure. But on a Saturday night, one of our players named Pablo Lopez, 6'5", 285, 290, tackle, beautiful guy.
He was a big offensive lineman, and I think he was destined to be a professional football player. He was the one player on our team I thought would definitely go into professional football.
Very popular with his teammates. He was a Cuban kid. I mean, though he got along with all the guys, all the white guys, all the black. He got along with everybody.
Well, we had an open date one weekend, and he went to a dance up on the campus.
As he was walking through the parking lot, him and another teammate, a car came through the lot and almost hit him. They were walking through some cars, And Pablo, from what I hear, got in that driver's window and just cursed him out and threatened to whip his tail or whatever you want to say, and then just kind of went on to the party, didn't think much of it. Well, he really hurt that kid's pride. So he decided he's going to go home, get a sawed-off shotgun. He put it underneath Pablo's car, and he told his buddies to go into that party and tell Pablo that I'm messing with his car, and tell Pablo he better get out of here. So anyway, Pablo comes out with half the football team. And Pablo begins to walk towards this guy, and as he got closer, he reached under Pablo's car and pointed this shotgun at him. And then so Pablo apparently stopped for a moment anyway and was trying to decide how he was going to handle it. And well, Pablo was kind of call his bluff, and he was not going to back down in front of this guy, in front of all his friends. And so he kind of, apparently he walked towards him saying, "You're not going to shoot me, bro." And he just kept walking to him, and the kid panicked, pulled the trigger, and shot him right in the belly at point blank range. And Pablo, he probably died before he even made it to the hospital.
Ooh, was that a shock? And my players went crazy. That's one of the worst things I ever do, go out to the hospital and get there and find out he just died.
Well, the next morning, we had a team meeting, and I'll never forget, he was pointing out into the group, and he pointed at the chair where Pablo was sitting.
All the team was in there, and I mentioned to him the fact that, well, there's an empty seat right there, Pablo Lopez, and I think I said something like, "Wonder where he is today."
He began to talk about Pablo, talk about eternity, talking about where Pablo might be right now, that he was gone.
Wonder where he is there, because I believe in life after death. Yeah. So I wonder where he is today. You know, put that thought out there, and gave him a little preaching.
He said that he believed there was a heaven and a hell. He believed that there is a God, and that God did have a son, and his name was Jesus, and he lived a perfect life for 33 years. And he came to this earth to save us from our sin, you know, because we can't be perfect. We can't obey the 10 Commandments perfectly. You know, everybody's going to sin. So because of that, God sent his son. He died on the cross, and his death paid the price for us to be able to live eternally with God. And I'll never forget, he was pointing out into the group, and he pointed at the chair where Pablo was sitting. And of course it was empty. And he says, "Men, you think you're going to live forever. You're 18 to 22 years old. You're big, you're strong. You think you're going to live forever, but you're not." And he said, "Man, if that was you last night, do you know where you'd spend eternity?" And so I'm in the back of the room, and I'm listening to this, and it's like he was speaking to me, and God was speaking to me through him. So it all clicked, and it was the time when I knew that I wanted to turn my life over to Christ, and I knew I needed to see him. And the next day I went into his office, and I said, "Coach, I know you invited these young players to come in your office, but is it okay if a young coach comes in and talks to you about it?" And he said, "Sure, buddy." I don't know if he knew my name yet.
And so after that was over, Mark came by to see me, and he said, "Coach, I don't understand this." Anyway, we talked about it, and I explained it to him, and about Christianity, and he accepted the Lord there. We prayed about it.
So he led me in a prayer to receive Christ right there in his office. And it's pretty awesome.
Wow.
I personally feel like he's a stronger Christian than I am. You know, I think he's stronger. Right? Yeah, I think he's stronger. I think he's tougher than I am, you know, in that regard. I mean, I slip up more than he does.
You know, Coach Bowden led him to the Lord. And since that day, he has just walked obediently. Now, of course, he's not perfect by any means, but he's in the Word on a daily basis. He prays over everything. He just lives his life in obedience to God. And it's real and it's true. And that's the way he lives his life. And it's comforting, and it's neat to see a man in that position live his life in genuine obedience to God. It really is awesome.
You know, just because you made that decision doesn't mean everything in life goes smooth. You've had your share of challenges. Catherine had some health issues. How did you get through those? How do you deal with those? And it's really true that bad things happen to good people.
I mean, bad things happen to everybody. It's life.
We're not immune.
Yeah, it's how we react to them, you know, and where would we go for strength, you know, at those times. But Catherine went from some suspicious tissue at a checkup to taking another test, and it still looked a little fishy. And then they took some cells out and studied them, and then we found out she had cervical cancer. And then not long after that, she's having a radical hysterectomy, and they're taking lymph nodes out, and they're doing pathology.
He handled it a lot worse than she did. She was a rock. She was solid. I never saw her waver. And, I know them very, very well. And, my wife and I were very impressed by her steadfastness in the storm.
Well, what if you die? What are we going to do? I mean, and all those kinds of things. And she handled it better than me. I mean, I really struggled. I went numb for about a month, really.
I remember the day he found out, and then a couple of days later we were over in Woodstock and he was speaking, and he could hardly speak without really weeping. And it didn't shake his faith, but he realized, that's his bride.
I struggled mightily to the point where I could hardly pray. And Catherine didn't want me to tell people. She didn't want me to tell people. But I said, honey, anybody I know that has faith, anybody I know that believes in prayer, I'm going to tell them, because I want them to pray.
He asked anybody and everybody that he knew that was a believer to pray. And we were vigilant in our prayers for her.
And she knew that, and she was able to deal with it, and she came through with flying colors. And my gosh, we know in a year or 2 or 5 or whatever that the same thing could come back to her, or cancer in a different form. It could hit me. I mean, one of our children, something can happen to one of our children. I mean, there's so many things that can happen, and we realize that. But it gives you peace to know that God truly is in control.
Coming up next on Head Coach.
Because, we can't have you wishy-washy on this thing. I took him by surprise because I went after the job, and then he says, you got it, and I was a little bit in shock, and I was also, and I got scared.
This Coach's Fact is brought to you by Crystal. Check us out online at crystal.com. In Mark Richt's 6 years at Georgia, his teams have won 3 SEC Eastern Division titles, 2 SEC championships, and he's posted a winning percentage of 78%. Richt is one of only 9 head coaches in Division 1A history to record 60 or more wins in their first 6 seasons. He is also one of only 6 coaches to win 2 SEC championships in his first 5 years as a head coach.
Story hearing from Coach Dooley about the hiring process.
Yeah.
And in talking with you, it sounds like this was really one of the only jobs you really pursued. Yeah. Is that true?
It was. We were very, very happy at Florida State. It was my wife's home. I'm there with Coach Bowden. We're winning. We're coaching great kids. I mean, I didn't have this burning desire to be a head man, really. But I kind of got a sense that that's where God was leading me. And, there was an opportunity about 10 years ago at the University of Pittsburgh that I believed I had that opportunity to take that job if I wanted it. And I wasn't ready for it. And I knew I wasn't ready for it. And I didn't think we were going to live the rest of our lives in Pittsburgh.
Mark was known around the country as a bright young assistant with a great future as a head coach. He had been offered a couple of other jobs, pretty good jobs, that he turned down.
And so Catherine and I kind of got our heads together and said, we think there may be a day when we do become head coach, but when we do, we really want to move no times, just stay at Florida State the rest of our lives and enjoy it, or we want to move one time. And so we wanted it to be a special place, a place I felt was good to raise our family, a place that I thought we could win, because if you don't win, you don't stay anyway. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to bang your head against the wall in this profession, you want to have the resources to get it done.
Let's go. Let's move, man. Let's move. Don't be walking. Let's go. Let's go. Defense, go to your coaches now. Let's go.
Well, sure enough, it looked like I had an opportunity for the Georgia job. And when I knew I was being thought of as a candidate, I immediately called Grant Taft, who's the head of the American Football Coaches Association. I knew he knew Coach Dooley. I asked him to please call him on my behalf. And I had known him from some years prior. I asked Coach Bowden to call Coach Dooley. I know Coach Bowden knew Coach Dooley.
Bobby could not have said any nicer things about him, except he had that one question. As you go through and say all the good things, then you come, well, what's the downside? And the one downside was is Mark just too nice of a fella to be a head football coach?
Well, Vince had called me about Mark, you know, and I said, I don't know how he'll respond to the pressures and the criticism of it, but if he can get over that, he's going to be real good.
Can he really make the tough decisions? And that was a question. And you don't know when you hire an assistant coach because there's no proven record of being in that position.
Hey, Sean, get even lower. Because these guys will jack you up.
Yes, sir.
All right, I don't know who got jacked. You got jacked up the one time, right?
Yes, sir.
You know they will knock you out of your shoes, all right? So that's what I'm talking about.
So anyway, I interviewed for the job, and I'm doing the best I can. And President Adams and Coach Dooley came to Tallahassee, and we talked, and they had a few other candidates they were going to interview, and they were going to get back with me, you know, at the end of the week, I think is what they said.
When I was convinced that he was the right person for the job, I did call him and offer him the job.
Kind of shocked me and called me like a day or two earlier than I thought they'd give me some news, and he offers me the job.
And he turned it down.
And I was like, it just caught me off guard, you know, and I said, I don't know, Coach. I'm not sure I want it. He's like, are you sure?
You were talking about him being a little bit hesitant taking that job.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing I was kind of worried about. You know, because you got to be tough to go get that job now.
Yeah.
That Georgia ain't one of them.
Talk about expectations.
That's one of them great jobs, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's typical Mark, though, really think it through before he made his decision.
Stack down. All right, I heard that one. Whose was that, Pop? Y'all claiming it? One more roll. Let's go. L, red 88. L, red 88. Let's go hard, quick, down. Down, down. All right, hard, quick, down, down, down. Let's go. Go.
Well, I think that the reality of it sort of set in just for a period of time that I'm leaving this secure place that I've been for 12 or 14 years, where I've had a wonderful time, where I've got a wonderful family and we have a wonderful life, and the uncertainty of this situation. I think he just got cold feet for a period of time.
He's like, don't do that to me now. You got to know if you're going to do it or not. And so that conversation turned into Coach Dooley saying, you call me first thing in the morning and you tell me one way or another.
And so I just told him, I said, well, if you have second thoughts about this, Mark, please let me know, because I do have to move on.
We can't have you wishy-washy on this thing. You know, I took him by surprise because I went after the job, and then he said, you got it, and I was a little bit in shock, and I was also, and I got scared, you know, I got scared. And I remember my wife saying, God doesn't give you the spirit of fear. This fear is not coming from God, I'm telling you. Then my younger brother called me, and he told me that I was nuts, you know. Well, anyway,
Coach Dooley probably thought you were nuts.
Yeah, I came to grips with it, that this is really what I wanted to do, and that it was really something I felt the Lord was leading us to do.
Hey, Dez, I know you're not blocking anybody. Well, although Coach is a pretty stout guy, get your knees down. Let's pretend like it's game day right now. Stay down low. Stay down low. There you go.
So I did call Coach Dooley first thing in the morning. I called him about 2 in the morning because I was afraid that he may wake up and change his mind. So I wanted to catch him off guard and make sure he knew I wanted the job.
And I think within about 4 hours, at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, he gave me a call and told me that he really wants the job, that there's no question. And I said, are you sure, Mark? He said, yes, I'm sure. And I said, do you want to wait and sleep on it? He said, I'm sure.
That was an exciting time, but a scary time, too.
Yeah.
And about a month into the job, I realized why I was so scared. It was like, I mean, as much as I thought I was kind of, you know, giving it to the Lord and knowing that I couldn't do it by myself, I mean, about a month in, I was literally laying on the carpet at the Holiday Inn, crying out to God, saying, God, what'd you do to me? Why'd you put me here? I can't do it, you know?
Just overwhelming?
It was just overwhelmed. I was like, I can't do this job. I can't do it, you know? And God basically said to my spirit, he says, you're right, you can't do it. So you give it back to me. and we'll see how it goes from there.
You were right where he wanted you.
That's right. Yeah. Totally dependent on him, and not dependent on me. When I depended on me, I was getting crushed like a bug.
You see him on the sidelines, and he's always got that kind of middle of the road, never too high, never too low. You know, right. You never get him being really fired up or angry. I never see him chewing anybody out.
Yeah.
Is that just his personality, or is that just discipline?
Well, that's discipline, and a little bit of personality, but mostly discipline. He wants his kids to see that and not to go crazy. His kids want to play with that kind of, in football you want to have passion, but you want to be under control.
I like the demeanor that he has. I like never too high, never too low.
Mark has tremendous passion for this game, but he's under control. He's not wild out there. Inside he might be going wild, but outside he's showing great calmness so those kids can reflect that.
I think that's extremely important and a great quality of his. But it also was part of the concern if he was tough enough that Bobby Bowden had mentioned to me. And so one day at practice, again with this even keel demeanor, he got irritated with a receiver. Got pretty irritated with the receiver. And even shouted out to get off the field and get on the sideline. I don't want to see you anymore. And he was pretty assertive. And when he did that, I almost ran out there to hug him because.
Atta boy!
Yeah.
Yeah. Coming up next on Head Coach.
I learned how to take criticism, because anybody who calls plays, you're going to get criticized because you never call a perfect game, and hindsight is always 20/20.
Coach's Fact is proudly brought to you by Carpets of Dalton, the world's largest floor covering store. Mark Richt is recognized as a strong recruiter and developer of young talent that will play at the next level. Since he has been head coach, the NFL has been looking Georgia's way. 32 of Richt's players have been chosen in the NFL draft over the last 5 years, which includes 8 players selected in the '02 NFL draft, the most Georgia players ever selected in a single year.
I've had the pleasure of meeting your family, meeting your kids. You've got a fantastic family.
Thank you.
John is particularly, I got to spend some good time with John on the golf course.
That's right.
He's a great kid. He's got some exciting things. He's got a pretty proud papa right about now.
He's a quarterback. He's going to be a junior. I said, John, if you could just choose anywhere you can go, just to go to football camp this summer, where would you want to go? And we started looking on the internet and found that Clemson was having a camp. So I called Coach Tommy Bowden and said, is it okay just to prorate the camp for one day? And he said, sure. And when the camp was over, Coach Bowden came up to me and said, we're going to offer John a scholarship. And I'm like, no. It's like, you sure? And he said, yeah. He said, my quarterback's coach really loves him. Our receivers coach really like him, and we want to offer him, and he's only going to be a junior, and I was just trying to get him a little exposure and let him see, what it kind of takes and all that kind of thing. And he's got a long way to go, believe me, but it was an awesome day for him and for me and for our family to have someone think enough of him to offer him a scholarship. So that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, he was pretty pumped about it,
Yeah,
too.
he was pumped. He's wearing a lot of orange lately. Orange doesn't do good in our family at all. No matter where I've been coaching. And I got to mention David. David Richt is an awesome kid. I call him my Renaissance man. He's good at everything. School, football.
Good-looking kid. He's tall too.
Yeah, he's tall. Plays the piano. He wrote his own songs, sings his own words,
right?
Plays the piano. It's just. He's a neat kid. They're all wonderful kids.
Now, you've also adopted 2 children from the Ukraine.
Right. When we just had John and David, and we were talking about some of the ills of society, people that were struggling, the poor, the orphans, the widows, and that it's the church's responsibility to take care of these people. You know, so we're thinking, well, what are we doing? Well, one of the ladies in that Sunday school class and her husband had already adopted a couple children from Ukraine. Well, when they're in Ukraine at these orphanages, they see this boy named Andre, and he's about 3 years old, but they were going for a couple babies, you know. But they see him, they're like, man, he would just fit right in Mark and Catherine's family, you know. And so they came back with video, and they're telling us about him and everything. And so all that kind of came together, and we said, you know what? Let's do that. Well, while we're looking at these pictures of Andre, we also see these pictures of who turned out to be Anya. And it was a face that kind of stood out in the crowd, so to speak. And so we were like, you know what, I wonder if anybody would ever adopt that child. And so we just decided we were going to try to get Andre, and we're going to try to get this child named Anya. We didn't know it was Anya at the time. She goes to the orphanage, and when she goes to find Andre, he's gone. They'd already promised him to someone else. I think he was there, but he was promised to another family. And they said, would you still like to look at a boy? And of course, you know, Catherine's like, sure, you know. So the first kid they put in the room was Zach. His real name is Ruslan. And Ruslan ran in that room, and he came in and he knocked everything over and spilled drinks and was just running around the room crazy. And she said, he's perfect. He'll fit right in.
It's right in.
So we adopted Ruslan and Anya, and Ruslan's middle name is Zachariah. We call him Zach. And so that's how we got Zach and Anya, and we flew back, and our lives haven't been the same since.
Yeah.
But they're a blessing to us for sure.
First day, I saw more hustle, and I just saw a whole lot of plays being made. I got really excited about this team yesterday. Let's get me excited again today with a great day of focus, fighting, and finishing. All right, y'all ready to go? All right, let's get a break. Let's get a break.
You know, you're in a profession, obviously, that's driven by wins and losses. I mean, success ultimately is determined by what's your record.
Sure.
Is that really what's important and most important to Coach Richt, or what does he do? Is there an emphasis placed on that?
Well, he knows if you build the kid character, if you build him inside, we're going to get good enough athletes here at Georgia. We're going to get good football players here at Georgia. But if you'll take the time to work the inside, then the outside results down at Sanford Stadium are going to show.
I want these guys to be good husbands. I want them to be good fathers. I want them to be good employees or employers, good citizens, good leaders of this country, you know. And that's really what's most important to me.
And it's not just talk. That's the way Mark does it, because he set up, as soon as he got here, he set up a character education program.
And we go from kind of core value into, you know, character issues to leadership at the end, you know. By the time they come to me, we're strictly talking about leadership. How can we lead this team practically? How can you become a great leader in your home? How can you become a leader if you become the offensive coordinator or a head coach or whatever you might decide to do in life? You know, and it's a great way to help your guys out, but it's also a great way to connect with them too. It's a great way to say, men, I love you, I care about you, I want you to succeed, you know. The seniors take ownership of that team and the leadership of that team. I tell them, I said, man, it's on your watch now, you know. What are you going to do?
Because I would rather have a coach with character than a coach that's a character. And I think that's what the University of Georgia has, and that's what I think the state of Georgia appreciates with Coach Richt. He is a coach with character.
I've often said that if there was one word that I could describe Mark Richt, it would be leadership. He also is a person of character, a total character. And by that, I mean integrity, I mean self-discipline, I mean family, high morals, good values, all the things that you'd like to have your football coach to have.
Hey, better cadence, Matthew. Do that all the time, all right? Just get in the habit. And let the other guys hear it too. Because if you got a practice cadence and then a game cadence, we're going to jump, okay?
Hammer, let's line up.
I've seen people get promoted and begin to really, I don't know, forget where they come from. In Coach Richt, I've honestly seen this. He has gotten more humble since he's gotten the job. And with the success that he's had, he's relied more on the Lord. He's gotten more humble in that aspect.
It seemed like there was a transition. We were talking about that. There was almost a transition then to the to the quarterback you becoming Florida State almost during his tenure when he was there. What part did he play in that? What kind of role did he have in developing those guys?
Tremendous development. You know, they took on his persona, they took on his character, they took on his calmness in those games, because I'd sit with him up in the box. I'd sit right next to Mark, and I had the headset on, and I heard what he was saying to those quarterbacks.
Mark probably learned a tremendous amount about the position being at Miami. And then when he had the opportunity to be the coach at Florida State for a long period of time.
Whenever it would get tight, whenever it would get hard, Mark would always be able to calm those guys down. They had talent, but there's a lot of people that have talent. But Mark had a way to work with those kids to make them feel like, okay, it's going to be all right. I threw an interception, but I can go out there and do something great. And he always encourages those guys in a way that they went out there and performed at a high level.
I think that he really developed into what I think perhaps is the best college quarterback coach that I've ever seen. When you take and coached 2 Heisman Trophy winners, both of whom that are really different type players, different styles, and the coach being able to adjust and utilize the best abilities of those different styles, I think is a great tribute to him. And then coming here to Georgia to coach a young freshman quarterback for 4 years, who went on to become the winningest quarterback in the history of the college game in David Green. And then to be able at the same time to retain a backup who was very talented and under normal circumstances would have left and gone anywhere else except for the coach being Mark Richt, and then to prepare that player that when he did become the quarterback, he led his team to a championship. So 2 different quarterbacks, both successful, both leading their teams to championships. So to me, that's a pretty good track record.
Football-wise, the sky's the limit. I don't think there's any limits on what Georgia can do football-wise. You know, the last 4 years we've been in the top 10. Only one other team in America has done that, now Southern Cal. So I think it's just going to get better and better and better.
That is a great source of pride to me, in that one of the very last decisions that I made as the athletic director was to hire Mark Richt, and it's a great source of satisfaction to see him continue to represent the program so well by the performance of the team on the field and his performance and the way he represents the university and the athletic program off the field.